Okay, so we're back for part 2 of this video. The last time I unboxed my Frigedaeg, whatever they want to call it, little retro system. And today I'm going to show you some examples of the games from it. Also going to tell you whether I think it was worth it or not. So let's get started. Now that intro was from a game called Slayer for the Panasonic 3DO system. That came out back in, I want to say it was 92 or 93, something like that. We had picked one up. We were opening our pool hall, the neutral zone, and we got one of those and a couple of big screens. So we had the 3DO on one, Super Nintendo on the other. So as the systems came out, we got them and rented them out by the hour. They did really well. The 3DO actually did super well. And so for me, getting a retro system that can play 3DO is awesome, just for nostalgia. As you can see from the graphics, it's not the greatest, but for the time, it was amazing. Just absolutely amazing. And the music in this, while a little bit distorted, was amazing. And it fills my head full of so many memories when it plays. And so to have a retro player that can actually play this game makes me happy. But let's talk about how it does with all the other stuff. And then talk about the system as itself, whether it's worth it or not. It plays 3DO decently. I mean, it's not bad, but not superb either. There is some audio problems and stuff, but it does play 3DO pretty well, so that makes me happy. Because I was debating actually sending this unit back, because one of the problems, I'll just get straight to the punchline here, the game emulates everything up to PlayStation 1 really well. Nintendo 64 is kind of hit and miss, but mostly does pretty good. But up to PlayStation 1, it does really well. So I was debating sending it back because in the system, there are so many duplicates of games. So it says it has over 60,000 games. But a lot of those systems have multiple duplicates. And so I was debating sending it back, but then as I played Slayer, I took that back and I kept it. So let's look at how it does with a few other systems. The little intro it has is pretty cool. Now it does play a bunch of games from old PC ports. We're talking really old. If you remember back in the day when we got a game that was close to the arcade, even remotely close, we got excited. Next big thing that I really love about this, it has a lot of arcade ports, and these are true to the original, and they're good. And there is a lot of them. There's easily about 10,000 arcade games. And I spent a lot of time in the arcades growing up. So the arcade emulation is actually really good. Like I said, there are a lot of duplicates, and there's some that just don't work. And so sometimes you have to play around with them. If they don't work, you have to go in and change the program that it uses to run them, which emulator. And if you play around with it a bit, you can get it to work sometimes. I was very disappointed because I tried Tron, the arcade machine, and it loads up, but it doesn't work well. So I've got to figure out how to get that working, because that is an amazing game. Some more arcade ports. Like I said, there are a ton of arcade ports, and they have the key ones that I grew up with, which gets me excited. I love it. I love the sounds. I love the look. They did a really good job with the emulation on these. It is nice to have all the old games from the arcades Not all of them, but most of them, and it's a really good collection, a really good collection. And most of them run fairly well. There's a couple of them that run a little slow, but as if you're looking for just arcade games, this is actually a really good system. Of course, we have the Atari 2600, and you know you could run Atari 2600 on a potato, so no problems there. Of course, adventure, totally iconic game, amazing game. And it has thousands of Atari games. And this will run Atari 2600, 5200, 7800, Atari 400, 800, PC. So it's a good collection. Now, one thing I was happy about is it has the Atari 800 version of Donkey Kong, which for the systems, they always only had the first 3 levels. And for the Atari computers, they actually had the conveyor belt level, which was way cool as a kid. You know, because we were so used to the Atari 2600 version, which stunk. It was horrible, but we played it because we loved it. And then you got the Atari computer version that actually had the conveyor belts, and we were so happy. And then it actually plays Atari 5200 really well and has a good collection, and that was another big thing. So, Atari 5200, ColecoVision, and Intellivision, and then 3DO. If it could do well on those, I would be happy with the system. And I am glad to say that it actually does really well. The Atari 5200 to me was amazing because I had that system when I was, I want to say 11 or 12. I think I was 12 when we got it, because we got it in Albuquerque. And it was just so exciting because it had almost true to arcade ports. The version of Pac-Man was amazing to me because we were so used to the 2600 version, which was really bad. Then we got the 5200, and it had the little cartoons after every second set, and it was just good. It was really good. And again, my mother was the best at Pac-Man on the 5200. She was better than us on a lot of games on that system. Then there was the Atari 7800. I never had a 7800. I went from the 5200 to the ColecoVision. But the 7800 was a decent system. And if Atari had played their cards right, Nintendo wanted to release the Nintendo over here as the next Atari. And there was a fight between them, and they didn't do it. So Atari went into obscurity, and Nintendo rose to fame. But, yeah, this is the version, so the Atari 7800 version of Donkey Kong, and it's really good. It's really good. When controls are a little bit tough on with the controller I have for it, but so this also plays Atari Lynx games, which is really cool. I actually did have a Lynx a long time ago, and sadly I sold it. But it plays Atari Lynx games really well. Has quite a few of them. So I'm pleased with that. Then there's the Capcom collections. Some good games. You know, Ghosts and Goblins here is an iconic game. It was one of the toughest quarter munchers out there. You play it and be prepared to spend a lot of money because you would die. But it was a great game. Just a great game. Okay, and so when I see it plays a bunch of ColecoVision games, I kind of got excited. It was fun because I loved the ColecoVision. The only problem is the ColecoVision used a controller that had a keypad on it. So a number pad, and then buttons on the side, and joystick. And trying to map those keypads was always a hard one for me when using it on different emulators. This one does a really good job because it maps the controls to the Xbox controller. The Xbox controller, and it has the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You got enough buttons and directions to map the ColecoVision onto it. And so I was really excited about that, because I loved the ColecoVision. The ColecoVision, I got that when I was 15, and I loved that system. Absolutely loved it. So to see it being able to be emulated here just brings back a lot of memories, and I love it. Another cool game that I really wanted it to be able to do was Tron Deadly Discs for the Intellivision. And I'm happy to report it plays it, and it plays it decently. You know, it's another controller that's hard to map onto a regular controller because it had shoulder buttons, had a disc that moved for direction, and then a keypad. And so for like this game, you would use the keypad to throw the disc in the direction you wanted it to go. And so they've had to map that to the stick, and they did a decent job. It does lag a little bit, but it's fun. And this game was amazing. And if you got to 1,000,000, the guys with the white sticks would come out, smack you, and paralyze you. That was pretty cool. So me and my friend Coley, we would play this non-stop. You know, we loved this game, and we got really far on it. So that was a fun memory. Now, another cool game is this Devil's Crush. It's a pinball game, and I actually played it first on the Genesis. And I just really loved it. In fact, this is where I learned to love video pinball. Fantastic game. It was a lot of fun. Then, of course, you get to the NES, the first Nintendo system. And this plays it like a dream. So no problems whatsoever playing NES games. Love the NES. Absolutely love that system. And it plays a ton. And it has thousands of NES games. And it also will play the original Game Boy games. And for what that system was, they actually did a lot with it. And it was a great little handheld for the time. And then, of course, it runs Super Nintendo like a champ. So no problems with the Super Nintendo at all. And it has a couple thousand of those games. So if there's a game you liked that was on the Super Nintendo, it's probably in here. Now, for the Super Nintendo, the first time I played it, didn't have it till it was out for a little bit. But the first time I played it was playing Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past. And that game blew me away because I was so used to the NES graphics. And then you get into the Super Nintendo graphics where there was layered backgrounds, there was rain effects, there was water effects. You know, everything just looks amazing. You know, by today's standard, obviously, not so great, but back then, it blew me away. Another cool thing was it has the Virtual Boy games, which I was very glad about, because if I had a Virtual Boy right now, I couldn't play it. It would have no 3D effect for me. Being blind in the right eye, it just wouldn't work. But they do a good job of just emulating it to where you can play them. It's obviously not 3D, but you get the idea of what it was trying to do. And this was one of Nintendo's failures, but I gotta give them credit for trying. You know, they tried something new, and it didn't work, but it was interesting. Nintendo 64 games are kind of hit and miss. Some of them will not work. Some of them will work with audio problems. Some of them work with visual glitches. But most of them will work. And then most of the ones that are playable actually play pretty decently. So it's not too bad. Now, my big one that I wanted to run well was Beetle Adventure Racing. I loved that game. It plays decently. Still not perfect, but it plays decently. So if you want this for an N64 emulator, I would look elsewhere. Like I said, the 3DO, I'm so glad it plays the 3DO really well. The 3DO version of Road Rash was amazing. That one and Need for Speed were played constantly at the neutral zone. Constantly. This was a fun version of Road Rash. We had the 16-bit versions before, and they upped the graphics, upped the gameplay. I mean, it was good. It was good. That was such a mind-boggling game at the time. And easily one of the most popular at the neutral zone. So there you go. That's just an example, some clips of some of the games that the thing plays. Like I said, it's not fantastic, and I was actually thinking about sending it back. Then I did a little more research and realized that at that price point, you're not going to get much better. And so in order to get to that next performance level, it'd be around $250, which, I don't have. That's going to be saving up being points for a long time. So I decided I'm just going to go ahead and keep this. It's decent. So I will give it, if I were to give it a letter grade, I'd give it a C+. Give it a C+, because it does do some things well. And like with Dreamcast games, it does play them. And some of them play really well. And some of them do not play well at all. And I'll play around with the settings more and stuff, but the Sonic 3D, that did not play very well at all. The Sonic Adventures 1 and 2, and they play, but they're not fantastic. In fact, my little Retro Pocket 2, the 2 Plus, actually plays 3DO and Dreamcast better than this thing does. And so if you're wanting a great emulator that you can take on the go, get the Retro Pocket 2 Plus. That's my advice. This system isn't bad. It's not bad, and I don't mind it because it has a ton of games on it. Just a ton of games. A lot of duplicates. So when it says 60,000, maybe 25,000, but still 25,000 games, I don't think you're going to play that many in years. So, but it's a fun little system. I don't mind it. So I decided I'm going to keep it, and I like it, and I enjoy the games, and I'll just save up again for a better one. So they're always improving, so maybe by the time I actually save up enough, something amazing will come out, and I'll let you know. Alright, that's it for today. Have a good one.